Hi, this is Karen Weiss Krolikowski, and I'm a partner and founder of firmTRAK Solutions. And I'm with my other two partners, Ryan Altman and Rich Marvel. And we're here to discuss the latest and greatest of what's going on with what could possibly affect you as a recent grad from college. Ryan?
Yeah, not only a recent grad from college, but just anybody who used student loans to attend college, which there was a ruling, not a ruling, there was an announcement this week from the Trump admin where they're announcing their intent to garnish the wages of anybody who had student loans and is in default being defined as 9 months without a payment. And so we were kind of looking into this because this is a pretty big deal. It's going to affect up to 42.7 million some Americans. About 40% of them or so are in default. And there's just been a lot of changes and pushes and pulls in the student loan issue over the last 5 years dealing with COVID. All the income-based repayment plans were taken away and put back on. There's changes to the federal level to the Department of Education, which previously was dealing with the student loans, and now they're rolling that into the Small Business Administration. But they're going to be handling the garnishments through the Department of the Treasury in cooperation with the other departments. So it's just one of those things that's very much in flux. It causes a lot of stress for people's daily lives, not knowing how to handle what may or may not be coming in the future. And we just wanted to make a post about it and discuss a little bit because we were looking into some of the facts and figures behind what was happening. Rich, what were you looking at about it?
Well, I think it's interesting to first notice really what does this mean for the current debt pool for the federal government. And the statistics will say that there are 5 million borrowers that are currently in default with an additional 4 million in late stage delinquencies. So ultimately, there's 25% of the federal student loan portfolio could be at risk of non-collectible. So I think it was around $1.6 trillion. So as far as the policy that now is in place, now the government's wanting to go ahead and basically kickstart the collection of student loans that was paused during the pandemic. So now we're going back to, I guess, more fiscal responsibility, but that fiscal responsibility is going to come with some big consequences for borrowers that are in default. And as Ryan stated, I mean, this isn't just for new grads, but I mean, even for me as a person who has student loans from law school, I mean, I'm still servicing my student loans, and it's been a decade since I've graduated. If you're in default of those loans, it could impact a variety of borrowers from new grads to people that have been in their professions for 20 or 30 years even. So part of what the impact of this is going to mean for borrowers is the enforcement implications and the enforcement provisions that the federal government can utilize in order to start collecting these bad debts. The genesis of the government's ability to collect federal debts goes back to the Debt Collection Improvement Act from 1996. This allows the federal government to go ahead and, without any type of court action, move to collect debts that are owed to the federal government. They're going to start with garnishment of up to 15% of your disposable income, and that can be applied towards a variety of federal debts and loans, including student loans. There's no lawsuit required. All they need to do is provide a notice of intent to garnish. Now, if you do not contest this notice, which these are going to be coming out within the next 30 to 60 days, the garnishment can automatically proceed. So if you do nothing and you ignore it, the government can automatically start taking their 15%. There are a couple of things that I think a borrower needs to consider when kind of evaluating where they are with their student loans and whether or not they're current. I think the first thing that you need to do is check out your student loan status, and you can go to studentaid.gov to determine whether or not not your loans are in default. You can look at your repayment options And there is a program under the default resolution group, which would help with rehabilitation to bring you back into compliance, or they do have some income-driven repayment plans that you would be available for. You also, I think, as a threshold issue, could consider whether or not your loan is a federal loan or it's a private loan. Many times, there are private lenders that come and refinance federal loans. And if it's a private loan, the private loans are not going to be treated the same way. Private creditors are going to be considered private holders of debt, just like a bank would be. And I think that you're going to be afforded due process, and they're going to have a court judgment in order to move forward with collection. So those are some of the kind of the legal implications of this policy shift and how that's going to impact borrowers. And I think my takeaway from, my perspective of what we're talking about is ignorance is not bliss. And if you do receive a notice of intent to garnish, you will have to do something. And if you do not, the federal government is going to start garnishing your wages to the tune of about 15%.
I think there was one part that you just brought up, Rich, that I thought was real interesting. And you brought up a term called disposable income. And Ryan, you had done a little further research on how that's calculated. You want to share that information?
Well, yeah, and there's a couple of things I want to just point out that Rich mentioned, and then I'll talk about the disposable income, which really, when Rich mentions they're going to take 15% of your disposable income, what they're talking about is, for the definition from the government, is basically, there's a few other caveats, like items that are more specific, but the general meaning of that is 15% after taxes, federal income and FICA. So federal tax, state income tax, and FICA, Social Security, Medicare, and that's it. So they'll take a flat 15% after taxes, is essentially where that 15% comes from. And then the other point I wanted to highlight that I just found interesting is, like, how are they going to do this without a court order? And that's because they passed a law in 1996 called the DCIA, or the Debt Collection Improvement Act, where they decided on to give themselves the authority to garnish your wages of federal debt up to 15% with no court order. That's the percentage they came up with. So it's just kind of interesting how something extends from 40 years ago at this point, 30 years ago, they're gonna pull it up and use that authority to pull out your wages under a pandemic era fluctuation, and how the changing administration can affect you in the future. So I just thought, because when I originally we brought up this topic, I'm like, well, don't they have to filter through your state court to garnish your wages? And no, that's not the case. They have the authority to get 15% of that, and they gave it to themselves 30 years ago. So,
and I think
who would have guessed?
Yeah. And I think it's an important topic for us to bring up and to pass on to our clients or potential clients. And if you'd like to discuss it further with us, then feel free to reach out to us through all the social medias at firmTRAK.com and reach out and give us a call. We're happy to talk to you about it.